27th of July 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the Nuclear Proctologist.org. I hope you're doing good, if that's possible, in these difficult times. Fukushima is like eating a banana and walking in sunshine and flying on an airplane. These are taunts from the nuclear industry meant and successfully used to deceive you and manipulate you and many generations of you. Is Fukushima radioactive fallout like a banana and walking in sunshine or flying on an airplane? There's only one answer. It's no, of course not. But it's so firmly entrenched in generations of scumbags from the nuclear industry, they probably actually believe it at this stage. Inbreeding has that effect. Let's see if the extent of my video from last night. What we've been noticing on this site, and no other site has these attributes, is my videos are magically longer exactly 12 hours after. The video will get a little tiny bit longer. And so 134.30, which is that video right there, 134.30 versus 134, no, that can't be right, 15. Yeah, that's right. So it was 15 seconds longer, which is a huge jump. Let me double check that. Yeah, it's 15 seconds longer. And so that's significantly longer. One thing I noticed accidentally last night was, see how the video processing will begin shortly? Well, that's actually 1 hour after the video was already on my front page. And I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming that's them. And that 12 hours after the video is uploaded is magically a little bit longer, and certainly long enough to insert programs and software. But hey, who knows what the industry is really up to. I have lots of merchandise at my site. I took down some pages and put up some more. And so you can buy all kinds of merchandise. Save the insects, close nuclear power plants. Close all nuclear power plants by farms. Because it's outrageous that we have farms have surrounding nuclear power plants. We have a lot of that. Stop the chemotherapy genocide. Use DCA like you would with vitamin C. So you have that kind, all kinds of merchandise. If you want to try to spread the word, these are great gifts, great conversation starters. Imagine one of these mugs at your workplace. Imagine everybody getting one of those mugs at the workplace. Give your boss one of these mugs or sweatshirts. Start a conversation. Fukushima is an extinction event. Extinction level event. Church, you got only way to preserve human life is to close down nuclear power plants. I have a new additions up there. Moms, pies, and nuclear waste. All-American t-shirts. That's the new All-Americans. Moms, pies, and nuclear waste. Compliments of James Lucid's comment. It stuck with me after, and now it's immortalized as a t-shirt. Indonesia, and those shirts are rock bottom prices, by the way. It's only like $1 profit, $1.50 or something if you're from the United Kingdom. Indonesia lifts restrictions on post-Fukushima food imports. Indonesia. No, Indonesia didn't lift it. Some bizarre creep shook hands while visiting Japan. Yeah, sure, we'll poison everybody. Just for you, Japan. And of course, what's in it for me? That's what he's saying right there. Why take the chance with your population when children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium, just gamma, will start to see permanent heart problems? At 50 becquerels a kilogram, they'll see permanent heart problems for children pretty quickly. Because you've got to remember, it's going to keep bioaccumulating for the rest of your life because you're eating it all the time. It's the worst case scenario, by the way. It's the no-no. It's why we have respirators so you don't eat the stuff in your body. Some children in Fukushima are down, weight is down 75% from the normal increases. Some children only gaining 1 pound of weight a year. You know that MIT University, Stanford University, Oxford, magnificent mechanical departments university, and the list goes on. They're not trying to build a robot for radiation. In fact, they've never tried. And that the children in Fukushima prefecture are trying to build robots because all the biggest, best robotic companies on the planet won't have anything to do with it. Radiation forecasts withheld by the government. They're no longer a government, now are they? That's sedition. Releasing it would cause unnecessary panic, which is, why do you have 100 sirens around a nuclear power plant again? Oh, that's right, it caused panic. The ministry decided such data would be unavailable due to the loss of power. Does that make any sense to anybody that that wasn't addressed? That's not a crime somehow? Insider says Prime Minister was contemplating evacuating 30 million just from Tokyo, 220 kilometers away. They didn't, though, because of fear of mass panic and chaos. Just what they said at 3 Mile Island, right? Exact same reason they didn't evacuate. Oh, well, people will panic. But they've done drills for decades of panic. And so you created this radiological industry safety department, like the non-regulatory committee. They call themselves the nuclear regulatory committee, but it's, if you don't regulate anything, then you're the non-regulatory committee. And so they paid for their education, the equipment. They gave them all the monies necessary to complete the job. And when they finally have an accident and it's time to look for the radiation, they're like, no, we can't do that. We're going to lose our jobs. So when you contemplated evacuating 30 million people, but you didn't, the reason you contemplated removing them was because they were going to be ingesting and breathing and drinking and consuming and eating and washing in radioactive materials constantly. But you didn't because you were afraid they were going to panic. This is why we should be burning people at the stakes again. So there's an incentive for evil not to be evil. Leaders of Fukushima City, with 400,000 people, refused to evacuate the population after being asked. They were asked to evacuate. And Fukushima City is like 250,000 becquerels a square meter of just gamma, of just cesium. As if uranium, plutonium don't exist. Here's a doozy for you. 2014. Fukushima rice exports to resume. This is 4 years after multiple nuclear meltdowns. How about this one from 2012, I think. Yeah, this was 2012. Fukushima to ban rice grown in Onami. The government, the bizarre creatures that you hire to do a job, the minute they get the job, they refuse to do it. On Thursday, banned shipments of rice harvested in Onami district in the city of Fukushima City. But it's okay for people to live there, but you can't sell the rice that they're growing there. After one farmer's products registered levels of radioactive cesium above the provincial limits. And guess what the limits in 2012 were? 500 becquerels a kilogram. And the farmers were given Geiger counters, and if they found their rice was over 500 becquerels, because the Geiger counters they're given can only measure gamma. I'm laughing so I don't scream. It's called the gallows laugh. And so the farmers will check the rice. If the rice is over 500 becquerels, they dispose of it themselves, Dana? No, stupid. They're going to mix it with rice from somewhere else, and then that'll bring the limit down below what they call a safe limit, and then they can ship it. Problem solved. Well, ain't we going to check for neutrons, betas, and alphas? Oh, stop being such a spoiled brat. You can't check food. You can't give farmers Geiger counters and use that to quantify the safety of the food. It's called genocide because a lot of people are going to eat it, get sick, and eventually die from that. Does anybody actually know what the word evil means anymore? Does that word even matter anymore? Anybody, anywhere? No. I want to help even though it may do little to wipe away harmful rumors said about Fukushima agricultural products cause you're selling food at 500 becquerels a kilogram and you're not checking for curium or uranium or plutonium or americium or neptunium or strontiums. And most likely you're not checking. Right? You see my SafeCast done? They were like parasites. They were like child rapists that usually comes wherever there's major disasters and kidnaps children, right? SafeCast decided to take it a whole lot further. They went in and made and got easy all the money they wanted to get people in Japan to make their own Geiger counters. And go out and test it themselves if you're feeling like it. Come on down to our place at SafeCast. We'll put the numbers up on the internet. And of course, even if that worked, they can only check for gamma, right? But that doesn't work. That's been proven a very long time ago. These things didn't actually work. Yeah, they were showing odd numbers because they didn't work. The real numbers, everybody would have got on top of a hill and started flapping their arms trying to get out of Japan. Fukushima children to receive radiation meters. Ultimately, it was around 85,000 or something like that. It's hard to imagine something more frightening than 5-year-olds marching off to irradiated school playgrounds with Geiger counters strapped to their chest. These are not even Geiger counters in the context of you can read it yourself. These are dosimeters, which means you're going to ship them off to universities. Parents have no concept of what's going on and won't, of course. If it's so bad that you feel you should give them dosimeters, they done that just to pacify the people, see? Because people are incapable for some reason of understanding what nuclear is, man-made anthropogenic nuclear. That's the big question is what kind of academic can leave the children there? How does that actually work? What kind of scientist is like, well, let's give them dosimeters to air that nuclear wasteland, so... Like, how does... What's the... They give them the dosimeters and the academics go home and says, honey, yeah, we gave a bunch of school children, because like, they're in a really radioactive area. And his wife is like, well, shouldn't you move them out of there? Look, what are you talking about? We can't study them if we move them out of there. What do you think we got Hiroshima and Nagasaki for? Building cities on bomb craters. Thank God that didn't catch on. There's just 2 cities. Phew. Seniors urged to eat the Fukushima rice to help the farmers. I'm getting to Indonesia. Hang on. You gotta kind of build a story, right? Before you can tell a story. It's nuclear. What do you want? Seniors are... This is a great story. Don't you just love this? This is the Japan Times, by the way. They're like the biggest thing in Japan. Surely you can trust them. So... Because they had a nuclear accident, what they decided was that people 60 and older should head to Fukushima because they're disposable, right? And which is what they said, right? 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima. But anybody that was too feeble to make it, they would say, well, you should eat the rice so that the children don't accidentally eat it and get sick and die. Because that's real logic, you know. If you work your whole life and you finally retire and you get a pension and you got to enjoy the twilight years, and nobody knows how long the twilight years are going to last. Could last one day after you retire. You could get another 40 years out of it, right? Who knows? Not likely this day and age. But Japan's like, we got a conveyor belt ready to get rid of the people that built the country by breaking their backs. Seniors are urged to eat Fukushima rice to help the farmers and protect young people. Of course, they took that down, right? I would if I was them. That's just madness. Oh, and there's an author's name there. Don't let history forget that. Like Japan Times, really Japan Times. A Tokyo senior doesn't own the paper. The paper decided to publish this because it was evil and they liked it. A Tokyo senior and the newspaper is waging a war on senior citizens, aka an individual effort to get the elderly people to eat the rice grown in a nuclear wasteland to help the local farmers struggling with rumors that their crops are radioactive, which of course they are because you're surrounded by around 60 million one-ton bags of radiation. The reactors are still melting down. And to make sure the grain isn't consumed by the more vulnerable younger generation. So why are you worried about the younger generation consuming it if it's a nasty rumor? Why would you give it to people instead of putting it on a nuclear waste site? That's a question I like to ask everybody who wrote that article and okayed it. And the elderly must eat the Fukushima rice, they told the Japan Times on Monday. Japan Times like, yeah, we totally agree with you. Sounds perfectly logical to everybody that's insane, probably. Compared with young people, the elderly are believed to be less prone to the harmful effects of radiation. Did you hear that? I'm not going to repeat it again because I'm just some days all I can do is not get on a plane and fly to Japan and find these people and slap them. It doesn't make any sense, right? Hang on here. The story is absurd, see? How can you tell the story and really do it justice? You can't just blah, blah, blah and walk away. They didn't start picking up these bags till the next year, by the way. And there's millions and millions and millions of them. Tens of millions of them. However, he had entered a sales contract with a rice wholesaler in the Fukushima prefecture and is calling on seniors to place orders by fax or online, and they provide the phone number at the bottom of it, believe it or not, and is calling on seniors to place orders, including Mixi and Facebook. And of course, Facebook didn't take the page down. I just want to make sure people know I am not doing this for business purposes. No. The orders are handled by Hari have announced counted to 1,700 kilograms. Around 700 kilograms was bought by an elderly care facility in Tokyo. That's not a crime, by the way. It's not illegal to murder you with radioactive food. Isn't that reassuring? And Congress and parliaments around the world don't have the authority to make it illegal. Only apparently the non-regulatory commissions can do it. They're not doing it, obviously. 700 kilograms was bought by an elderly care facility in Tokyo. My goodness. Just my goodness. It's a minimum amount compared with Fukushima's 240,000 ton annual rice yield. The numbers is actually almost £1 billion a year, folks. It's a lot more than that. The rice harvested in the fall is normally sold out by February. This year, 40% of the harvest was still stuck in February. He wants to help, not just because he wants to help Fukushima farmers poison everybody, but also because he wants to make sure the elderly eat as much Fukushima rice as possible to prevent the children from accidentally eating the grain. Try making that up on your own. I double dare you. I double dare you. Instead of arresting the farmers, they murder all the people who helped build the country, who sacrificed it all. There are no regulations obliging restaurants and makers of rice lunchboxes to list the origins of the rice that they're going to use. And this could lead to children eating the Fukushima rice, he said. So therefore, why don't the elderly, whose potential for suffering health damage from radiation is lower than it is for youths, eat all the Fukushima rice? Well, that's simply not true. Yeah, the children are actually more vulnerable, but the elderly are too because their immune systems are compromised. And this instantly is, and the rice we're talking about is not rice anything on the planet, let alone humans, should be eating. The numbers are just, it makes me cry in the daytime when I'm not doing the show. Let's put it that way. Farmers are required to check the radiation levels in their rice. Now, let me read that sentence again. The farmers are required to check the radiation levels in their rice, and if the level of radioactive cesium exceeds 500 becquerels per kilogram, they are banned from selling it. But the other story says all you gotta do is mix it with rice that doesn't have a high number to get the number down. Don't forget to put the batteries in your Geiger counters. It's just like there's no part of this story that should be true. There's not a single part of this story that should exist, let alone be condoned. And you can see the number in the bottom. To order, send a fax message to Mass Murderer Incorporation. He's also a member of the Skilled Veterans Corps for Fukushima, a group consisting of elderly people of experience working at nuclear plants, figures. Said another reason for promoting Fukushima rice is he wants to gain support from residents so he and the other group members can be asked to work at the crippled multiple nuclear meltdown plant so that younger, more vulnerable workers don't have to. So usually when I try to read the story originally, I would get up and vomit after the first couple of paragraphs. And then I would sit down and read, and I would get up and go vomit again. And I'm actually not kidding. And the whole nuclear industry is like this. This is normal for the nuclear industry. The elderly should eat it so that the young people don't accidentally eat it, Dana. Have you ever heard of a nuclear dumping site? Apparently not. Those interested in buying the rice got to pay cash on delivery. So Indonesia, lift restrictions and post-Fukushima. Indonesia didn't do it. A freaking creature done it by going down in front of a large media setup, because this was Japan's Murder Indonesia Day, apparently. Japanese puppet Fumio Kishida and visiting Indonesian President Widodo held talks in Tokyo on Wednesday ahead of this year's Group of 20 Major Economies Summit in Bali in November, which Voodoo will host from Indonesia. So he just now said, let's poison everybody in Indonesia all day, every day with food from a nuclear wasteland. And the whole world is happy. Nobody's ever come out and said anything about it. And if I didn't come out and say something tonight, there wouldn't be a single person on the entire fucking planet that would have come out and said, "Jeez, you sure you don't want to think about this first?" Oh, fuck it, I'm here, I'm shaking hands, it's done. If you think you have a planet, you're fucking delusional. You're actually delusional. They have a planet, but you don't have one. We're the bottom feeders. They despise us with every fiber in their body. They can't stand puppies or kittens. They probably wear high heels and stamps on them every night just before supper. Or when their children graduate school, probably. Japanese Prime Minister, happy to murder everything and everybody. Shake my hand, we'll murder everybody in your country. Can't shake it. Shake it. Fukushima's like eating a banana and walking in sunshine. Flying on an airplane. Woo! I like airplanes. Is Fukushima radioactive fallout really like a banana or walking in sunshine or flying on an airplane? You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. We got 93% said this is insanity. I think I got kidnapped a number of years ago and brought to a planet that looks like Earth. Sounds like Earth, but this is what a journalist the first day in university learns. For the last 11 years, that's the very first thing they learn. And if they say that, they can graduate without buying a single book. It's just like, how did we lose the planet to the industry, and why is the industry so fucking creepy for it? Following a summit meeting between the leaders, Kishida, aka mass murdering freak of nature for the nuclear industry, told a joint press conference, because you had all the media there, he shows up, shakes hand, Indonesia is fucked, that Indonesia's lifted all the restrictions and imports from Japanese food products that were imposed after multiple nuclear meltdowns contaminated the entire fucking planet. We want food from ground zero because Indonesia is stupid too. It's not just Canada and United Kingdom anymore. No. Indonesia's got to prove they're stupid, boy. I'm stupid. Are you stupid too? Prove it by taking food from a nuclear wasteland. Actually, I read that story and went right back to bed. I was like, yeah, this is that's the way it goes around this place. So, the food wasn't just banned from Fukushima prefecture. If you're Johnny-come-lately and just learning about this stuff, you got to get up to speed. I'm here to help you. So, you see all the prefectures I've highlighted? That's 14 prefectures that the food was banned in Japan, all 14 prefectures, by 55 countries. 55 countries. So, how bad is ground zero going to be, I wonder? If all these prefectures are banned by 55 countries, Indonesia. Hello, Indonesia. Is there anybody home in Indonesia? President's head has lifted all restrictions on food from a nuclear wasteland that's still hemorrhaging radiation. Japan's Prime Minister, aka puppet for the nuclear industry, said he was thankful for the move and that the lifting of import restrictions on the food product from 7 previous affected prefectures, which meant Indonesia was taking food from the other 7 banned prefectures. Did you know that United Kingdom actually lifted all restrictions on food from the nuclear wasteland about 4 years ago for babies, which are the most vulnerable on the planet? Think about that. So 4 years later, they lifted restrictions everywhere. One of the first restrictions they lifted was baby food from a nuclear wasteland. They don't hate you at all, do they? Has lifted all restrictions from nuclear wasteland. 7 previously affected prefectures here would encourage the people in the disaster-hit area, the people left behind or the people that couldn't get away. Has more rights than everybody who's going to get murdered because their supermarkets are full of hideously radioactive foods from a nuclear wasteland country. Said he asked Japan to ease or scrap the tariffs it imposes on the Indonesia tunas, pineapples, and he said bananas. So if Japan is willing to do that. He's willing to poison everybody in Japan till they're all gone. He also passed on his condolences over the fatal shooting. I'm going to actually put a T-shirt up with Shinzo Abe the moment he's shot. And it's going to say, goodbye, scumbag. You were good. Who was gunned down during a stump speech earlier this month. I have played that clip no less than 3,000 fucking times. Every time I'm feeling a little bit down, I'll pick up my cell phone and play it because I keep it there too. Am I a bad person, I wonder? Well, you've heard me say a couple of 100,000 times that they should get the death penalty for what they're doing. It should be on YouTube so we can enjoy it. I wasn't kidding. Average disposition density of cesium. What about uranium, plutonium, and americium, and neptunium, and strontium, and americium, and the thousands of other fission products? Now, this was United Nations pages. Right, UNSCLEAR, or ERP, I can't remember. Or the IAEA. United Nations has so many of these terrorist organizations, I can't keep them straight. But anyway, they took it down about 5 weeks ago or something. Because I was using it all the time. Putting links to it. We had a pretty good time. Average disposition density, that's radioactive fallout for us bleebs, of cesium. So let's just pretend only cesium comes from a nuclear meltdown because that makes no sense. So the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, so the absorbed doses in red bone marrow for the first year. Oh yeah, UNSCLEAR, that's right. Or ERPA or the IAEA, or they got so many of these terrorist groups I can't keep up with it. Okay, so the third row over there, 229,756, corresponds with the highlighted at the top of the page. Got to keep the hand going here. There's 230,000 atomic decays a second of just gamma. Because if they put in alphas and neutrons and betas, nobody's going to stay, right? So the first row of numbers, let me see if I can get this to work a bit better. Now I can point. So this row here is the square feet, and that number over there is the people in the community, 296,000 Fukushima City. You know, the Fukushima City that didn't evacuate. But that's what it is, a square meter where the children stand up waiting for the school bus, for instance. Date City is 147,000 becquerels. Now they're only acknowledging gamma, of course, right? Now, United Nations swears on their mother's graves there is no adverse side effects from being in a nuclear wasteland, despite what Dana Durnford might say and show and document and everything else. So this is what we're up against, okay? So who are you going to believe? You're going to believe United Nations numbers of the communities and the people in the communities? Or are you going to believe current United Nations experts, they change every 6 months, saying there is no adverse side effects? Which is an absurd suggestion, by the way. So look, these communities weren't evacuated. I walked the city, 350,000. Again, they're only acknowledging gamma, which is absurd. And they took this page down, unfortunately. I got a record of it, thank goodness. Koriyama City, 341,000, 162,000 counts per minute. And the list just keeps going, all these communities that have been abandoned, so the nuclear industry doesn't get a black eye, Dana. So, but what it shows you is you can't grow food in any of these communities, because that's not going away for millions of years. People are not supposed to be there. And so air samples in Tokyo 270 times more contaminated with gamma than global weapons fall peak. And that was a piece of shit, Christopher Busby. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the U.S. Radiation doses in the Northeast and the Great Lakes are equal to the West Coast, which was unfortunately brutalized. Okay, so that's supposed to be reactor 4 over there, and this is what it should look like. It should be 190 feet tall. The fuel pools would be at the top of the buildings. And so Arnie Gunnarsson, he's married to a nuclear lobbyist, Maggie, we call her Maggot, but Maggie Gunnarsson was the public spokesperson for the nuclear industry for 2 decades. Arnie's supposed to be anti-nuclear. He's married to probably the most prominent nuclear spokesperson in the nuclear industry, but Arnie's anti-nuclear, folks. Arnie says move south of the equator if the Unit 4 fuel pool goes dry.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So the division he ran built the fuel racks for the fuel pools exactly like Fukushima, but he doesn't know the fuel pool's gone. Do you really think you have a planet anymore? Is anybody really that gullible left on the planet? Report hoax. Irresponsible rumors claim the Fukushima spent fuel pool exploded. That's this fuel pool right here. Now, her job from CNN and all of the world's media had done the same thing. They're going to claim that they're in the fuel pool that actually doesn't even exist to the building you see to your left.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
And yeah, it's a good thing somebody was there to boo, because that's pretty booable. This is Helen Caldicott. Now, Helen Caldicott wrote 14 anti-nuclear books. She has a group she started Beyond Nuclear. She had Physicians for Nuclear, Against Nuclear. There was 29,000 doctors that had signed on to it. She's going to try to convince you that the building to the left is the real building, not the one to the right, like Arnie Gunnarsson done to you. Remember, she wrote 14 anti-nuclear books.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
So that's Helen Caldicott saying that they removed the debris and it does look pristine. Because the Japanese are very tidy people. And how do you argue with that, really? Ambassador Murata writes to UN Secretary General, it's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the entire world depends on a number 4 reactor. That building over there, not collapsing like that building over there, which happens to be the building that they're actually talking about. Nuclear activists to be constantly spied upon. Entire process has the echoes of George Orwell. Well, they really don't have much resistance. You got the hardcore that hang around here. Anybody hangs around here, and it got a little piece of my heart, because you got to be pretty hardcore anti-nuclear to be around this site. we're a bunch of pirates around here. We're the radical free thinkers around here, where people are like, hey, I don't know if I believe the official story. And I was like, me too. Me too. The West Coast was hit with 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 with a 15 million year half-life, and it was detected in the drinking water for large numbers of people. This is one of the xenon plumes. Wonderful xenon plumes. 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall in that plume, pulsing energy every second for 15 million years. Saturated the thyroid glands of all the insects and birds and mammals and animals and humans, and exterminated the lower part of the food chain immediately. And the trickle-down effect now is in second gear, baby. Radioactive xenon-133 in Washington at 450,000 times above the detection levels persisted for weeks. Whoa, man, that's two scary plumes. So you had the iodine-129. Of course, that can't exist without similar amount of iodine-133, which happens to be 9 times more effective than 131 at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of all species, not just humans. Something wicked this way comes, and a lot of it. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe, but Indonesia is going to get food from ground zero. Well, they only had a ban on 7 prefectures because their nuclear industry is really good at lying, I guess. Fukushima town is ready to lift evacuation orders today, but only about 10% of the town and 10% of the residents wish to return. You can only return to 10% of the nuclear wasteland. If you go back to that 10% of the nuclear wasteland, you should get $1 million for being that gullible. While the government has decided to lift evacuation orders, only 10% of the victims are gullible enough to go back, unfortunately. They were gullible enough, they were deceived all their life, and they're now complacent, I should use the word, I guess, and going to go back into the nuclear wasteland. The central government, they're no longer a government when they're doing stuff like this. This is not the government's job. Formally decided to remove the order on August the 30th for a fraction of the community. 5.55 square miles around the train station in Fudobar, which makes up 10% of the town, right alongside of the nuclear ongoing multiple meltdowns. So the nuclear industry is a very, very dangerous industry because they have these kind of attributes where they would sacrifice you quicker than they would snap a toothpick, which makes up 10% of the nuclear wasteland. The scene of a triple, I got to look for the word nuclear. Oh, there it is, nuclear meltdown. You'll never see the word triple nuclear meltdown. Well, you will, but it's pretty freaking weird. Weird. A difficult return zone, but residents will now be able to permanently return for the first time since the nuclear disaster. They're cutting open these 1-ton bags of radiation I was showing you earlier in this same town, by the way, which is a no-go zone. And they're growing food there, and it's for market. Try making that up on your own. Yeah, we're When people stop looking, we're going to dump the bags out in the no-go zone and grow food and ship it to market. Because that's what evil does. You're like, the minute you start understanding the little nuances of this whole industry, it's friggin' frightening, isn't it? That makes part of Fudabar the third area amongst those classified as reconstruction revitalization bases. So the no-go zone got reclassified as reconstruction and vitalization bases. So it goes from nuclear, you can't call it a nuclear wasteland, you're not going to get anybody to come back then, right? Let's call it a reconstruction and revitalization basis. Yeah, good. Okay, let's go get some sake and celebrate. In 6 municipalities in the prefectures, see its evacuation order lifted. Well, part of each town, right? These bases are where decontamination work to reduce the radiation levels in a nuclear wasteland. They're going to carve out a little section and say it's safe. No, seriously, they're going to carve out a little section and say it's safe. Yeah. No. Nobody would do that, come on. Next thing you know, they'll be growing food, shipping it worldwide. You think I'm going to believe that, Dana? Probably not. Has been carried out to enable residents to return to the nuclear wasteland right alongside of 2 kilometers away from multiple ongoing nuclear reactors and surrounded by no-go zones. You can't cross the street. And what do? You're going to get a fine? Because the police are back there. The town aims to have 2,000 people there in the next 8 years. That'll be 30% of the previous people that were going. If you can, like, you shouldn't be within at least 100 miles minimum, and even that is nowhere safe, right? But you shouldn't be within 100 miles of a nuclear power plant. That's without the accident. Once there has the accident, you need to leave the country. Santa Susana was like 460 3-mile islands melting down at the same time. Oh, and they hid it away since 1959. Still melting down today. 500,000 people built their homes within 10 miles of it. Down by Los Angeles because they don't know any better. There's evil, then there's nuclear. Nuclear has no competition whatsoever. And I mean that in like, you can't, like, you know, Hitler or Mao or Pol Pot or any of these crime lords, they got nothing on the nuclear industry. They are irrelevant, you know, compared to the nuclear industry. Others have decided they will not go back due to concerns over their living environment. And 60% have already decided not to return to the nuclear wasteland. 25% I can't make up their mind yet. One lady returned to her house she lived in before the nuclear accident because it's located outside the area where the evacuation order will be removed. Oh, she cannot return. That's right, sorry. I think she's 80 years old, bless her heart. And she believed the lies, unfortunately. Instead, Matsuru applied for municipal housing located within the area that they're going to open up. This is what I mean, right? So these poor people, these wonderful souls, incredibly gullible, unfortunately, are being deceived into going into the nuclear wasteland. When she finally dies there, they will bury her. And when everybody goes home, the industry will show up and dig her up. They'll fly her body to Los Alamos National Laboratory, and they'll ash her body, which is they'll incinerate it. Then they'll sniff the ashes for the radiation. And that's what they've done to thousands of people from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, by the way. Don't think for a second that they're not going to do it to her. You're literally as gullible as her if you don't believe that they're going to do that to her. I can assure you that's exactly what will happen to her body. And so she's looking forward to inviting her friends over to the town to go Sansi hunting, which is a food, I think. I'm telling my friends that they have to return, as I'll be there waiting to welcome them home. Bless her heart, boy. She doesn't know any better, right? Innocence is such a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, none of us who are aware will ever know what innocence is again. Meanwhile, people who are not willing to return to Fudabar have cited concerns over their living conditions. Residing in Fudabar is not an option for me, said one person. Thank goodness. I don't have a reason to relocate to a place with worse living conditions than Iwaki, because Iwaki should be abandoned, obviously, right? But it's definitely better than Fudabar, which is 2 kilometers away from ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. I don't think that the town will be able to go on, even with the returns of some elderly residents, she said. Because that's who they're tricking and deceiving into going back there. And that's so they can have a statistical number to make the industry look... Because it's all about looks, right? It's all about deception. Well, we got people living there; they're okay. This is what they'll say, right, to their detractors. Japan approves release of Fukushima water into the sea. This is from Nuclear Engineering International. These are a nuclear lobbying group, right? They'll never put their names on the stories like the World Nuclear Association or World Nuclear News. Zero possibilities they're going to put their name on the articles. Japan approves releases of Fukushima water. Japan done nothing but release the Fukushima water. And the whole world now is thinking that they got to worry about water. The whole story is just madness, but I'll show you why if you got the time. If not, you can always come back later. It takes a minute. The bottom corner model is radioactive fallout. That's the Atlantic Ocean where my finger is almost to, by the way. This model here is based on 19 days of radioactive fallout, but everybody's worried about the tanks. Nobody's worried about that for some reason. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. To me, it's like the Twilight Zone where, how can you not be worried about that? How does that actually work? Not only am I worried about it, I'm terrified about it. This is France's model of 16 days of radioactive fallout. But hey, let's worry about the tanks. Let's not worry about what's happening all day, every day. Let's not try to deal with that. Let's pretend this didn't happen and let's worry about the tanks. Let's pretend this didn't happen. Oh yeah, by the way, let's pretend that didn't happen too, which is Germany's model after 6 years. And the problem with this model, of course, is the radiation covered the planet in 16 days. So the ocean was polluted after 16 days. Oh, and what ocean did it? Oh, you know, the entire fucking planet. Excuse the reality. The water used to cool the melted reactor cores. Gets confusing sometimes, doesn't it? Japan approves release of the Fukushima water into the sea. That water is the water used to cool the melted reactor cores. Now, they say there's around 150 tons a day going into the tanks, which is equal to a garden hose split 4 ways. So if you split a garden hose 4 ways and pump one of them in each of the reactor building, that's the amount of water they're talking about. The whole story is absurd, by the way. So 1,000 tanks. They had 1,000 tanks in 2013, and 1,000 tanks in 2022. How many tanks did he fill up in the last 9 years? Anybody? Because I can do this with my head all day, by the way. I'm just going to do it for the rest of the show now like this. NRA has deemed it safe to release the water. Although it still contains, every time I hear the word traces, not tritium, but traces. Like if you have a little, like instead of raining, we have this little sprinkle. That's called traces, right? So just I don't have a word to describe it anymore that's appropriate. You got to come up with a new word to describe the nuclear industry. Because insane doesn't really cover it, right? It's definitely part of the words, but the word has to be like 600 letters long in order to really... tritium doesn't even come from a chain reaction. It's tritium 3H. Right, with an extra neutron, I think it is. Japan proves the release of Fukushima water into the sea with traces of tritium. The problem with the story is it's absurd. There is no filtration system that can filter high levels of radiation from water because the filter becomes so radioactive after about 20 minutes. The water you're putting through it comes out the other side infinitely more radioactive than the water that was going in the first place. You can't step over any of the hoses because it's a lethal dose. You can't get back in the building because the filter is a lethal dose from 1,000 feet away. The filter needs to be 6 feet thick of lead to work. And that's only if they put like 100 sieverts in it, which takes about 50 liters. Because each liter is 2.2 sieverts of just, by the way, beta. They're not... And 99% of the stories, they don't acknowledge alpha neutrons or betas, just gamma. That's just because that's how they've been manipulating you for 75, 80 years, is through the words like cesium and iodine. And iodine is only 10% gamma. Right? So they're incredibly wicked bunch, this nuclear industry. They're contaminated. Two liters is a lethal dose to walk past it. 5 gallons of it will kill every kid in a school in 20 minutes. And you can drag all the bodies out, fill it up with a school full of children. It'll do that for 1 million years. Just 5 gallons sitting in somewhere inside the school. So they're claiming that the advanced liquid processing system that didn't work all the way up into 2014 of April hadn't worked. And they couldn't dismantle it because it was so radioactive when they turned it on. Which again, right? See, radiation is lethal in quantities. So when you have water that's 2.2 sieverts and 3 sieverts is a lethal dose, you'll die within the next couple of weeks because your organs start melting, and then over the next couple of weeks you die. So the industry's job is to lie and deceive and manipulate you at all costs. And they got over 1,000 public relation firms that you might call medias. That is their job, full time, is to cover up the story. So they contact medias worldwide. They'll write the stories. The medias worldwide will publish the story with their authors, their journalist's name on it. That's how a journalist makes money now. Lobbyists will give a story to a media. The media will assign it to a journalist who has an audience of whatever, and they'll feed that story out there. If it gets a lot, if if it's a really exceptionally bullshit story, it'll syndicate it where it'll show up through writers and AP, and they have around 1,800 medias that aggregate everything from their site with spider bots, which means it's done automatically, right? So you get the same picture with the same paragraphs by the same public relation firm at the same time worldwide. So everybody's having the same conversation about the same disinformation. And of course, after decades of Spider-Man and the Hulk, the average person is completely brainwashed. But once you come across something like me, and you suffer your way through it, trying to figure it out, then it starts realizing what's going on. There's something going on here. It's not good. Because a lot of this is advanced, but I'm always trying to frame it so the average person who's new to the topic can start absorbing it. Because once you start absorbing it, a lot of the times you can extrapolate a lot of the questions you have on your own. So typically, if you watch 5 or 6 of my videos, you become pretty good at extrapolating the correct answer for questions that you might not have asked or thought to ask, right? All of a sudden when you hear a lie, you'll know that's a lie from the industry. And so I always feel bad for people that read the media all the time but don't have a way of venting. According to the plans, this story about treated water is delusional. This is a delusional, total fake story. It's a completely fake fabrication. The treated water would be diluted with seawater to reduce the amount of tritium. Again, they use the word tritium, right, to frame you into thinking, the typical unexperienced person into thinking in just this one dimension, instead of there's 1,000 fission products you're supposed to be worried about. And no matter what you release into the sea, you can't destroy it. The sea doesn't destroy radiation, right? You can boil it, and they do. In citric acid, it's at 1,000 degrees, 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures to extract plutonium and uranium. But you can't destroy it. So you can't put it in an incinerator and burn it and destroy it. You just liberate it back into the environment. It'll always pulse energy, almost at the speed of light, until it decides not to, which is theoretically, because they say that the average isotope has 10 half-lives. So it starts decaying, but it decays to a different isotope, a percentage of it each time. It will decay to another isotope. So this incredible amount of mathematics that go on there is just insane. But when it finally say it decays down to lead, when it gets to lead, remember, this was a man-made anthropogenic element. The sun doesn't create this stuff. And so when it finally gets to lead, it's not like the lead from the solar system, the stardust, the fabric of life itself. It's a different lead. It's still mildly radioactive, so to speak. Well, not so to speak. It's still mildly radioactive, where normally lead doesn't have an emitter. This lead does. It's still going to be pulsing energy. And because it's man-made, it has this other unique property where it's able to irradiate objects. So natural elements in the earth don't radiate other objects, but man-made does. So when you see those big plumes covering the entire planet, that's a no-no. The IAEA, their job is to cover up the secrets of this death cult known as the nuclear industry. That's their job, is to try to give it prominence, is to try to, right? And they always have these expensive meals, and everybody gets their pictures taken, and everybody's wearing tux at these presentations, and they do that to keep the spirits up in amongst all the mass murderers that buy into this, right? You create this bizarre facade of popularity, where you're special, you wear in a tux, you're getting a big wage, you're invited to travel, and all you gotta do is walk the walk and talk the talk of the bullshit industry. China, South Korea, and Taiwan has also objected. Now, they all know the tanks are empty. The tanks are actually empty. They were built to trick you into thinking they weren't poisoning the Pacific Ocean. That's the only reason they built the tanks. Right? There's no other reason to have these tanks. You can fill up all the tanks 6 times a day that they got there. Once again, I'll show you, because it's hard to accept the information that I bring to the table. This is why I had worked so hard. It took, the first time I live streamed with this equipment, it was something like 28 live stream attempts before I was able to get it to work reasonable. It was 6 months trying to figure out how to work the equipment, and never had nobody to help me. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. Okay, hang on. Well, I mean, that's the norm, right? It's the nuclear industry. It's such a sad industry, right? Because it does so much harm to every species, no exceptions. Every species that has replicating cells is incredibly vulnerable to this material. So 2013, they had 1,000 tanks. 2014, they had 1,200. 2017, they had 900 tanks. 2019, they had 1,000 tanks. 2021, they had 1,000 tanks. So they had 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2022. That means they never fill up any tanks in the last 9 years. You can pretend they did to those that refuse to acknowledge the facts. I hear you. You'll come around to my line of thinking at some point, because I'm honest and you're not. Asia goes nuclear as climate, and Ukraine banishes the memories of Fukushima. I got no idea why they put that connotation there, but it's Al Jazeera, so it doesn't really matter, I suppose. China, Japan, South Korea, India, Pakistan are betting on nuclear power amid climate crisis. Well, everybody's batshit crazy. I was almost going to say everybody was kung fu fighting. A company aims to power the world for millions of years by digging the deepest holes ever. So it's geothermal. They're going to use X-rays to drill holes, because it'll be done really fast. Company hopes to begin vaporizing rocks down to 800 feet, where it's 930 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures, 500 degrees Celsius by 2026. And so you can go under existing coal plants, oil plants, gas plants, nuclear plants, and drill a hole down, tap into the geothermal, get rid of gas, oil, coal, and nuclear material, and run the whole, keep the whole site, and just run it on geothermal. You don't have to ship another truckload, container shipload of fuel there. It's stupid, right? I agree with you. Stupid and good. But I mean, so why would you do nuclear when you can do something like that? Because the nuclear industry don't care about stuff like that, right? The idea is to promote nuclear, kill the planet. You got to do it in increments by poisoning the entire planet. According to the World Nuclear Association, which represents the industry, even Taiwan, where Asia anti-nuclear sentiment remains most entrenched, has seen resistance soften following a series of blackouts. That's all it takes to get you to change your mind, is it? And growing concerns about the Self-Root Island's future energy. Again, this is a frightening narrative we keep hearing over and over and over. The nuclear resurgence, not renaissance, marks a dramatic shift in priorities. Extreme weather events was caused by the nuclear fallout, including a record-breaking heat wave in Europe caused by radiation fallout. I showed you the maps earlier. It kills all the bacteria, all the fungus in your forest. So your forest, the litter and foliage doesn't break down. When you finally get a lightning strike, then the forest fires have a lot more fuel, right? And the war in Ukraine. So the war in Ukraine, we've heard this daily, every day now, for many months, as a catalyst for getting nuclear. First off, Russia's at a nuclear plant in Ukraine, using it as a human shield to fire weapons at Ukraine and NATO, and they can't fire back at them because they're at a nuclear plant. So if they have one event there, you got to melt down. Goodbye to your country's fresh water, your farmlands, and the species and the humans. Natural gas prices hitting records high. Nuclear seems to be the only quick option. Nuclear quick. This is a couple of times in the last week we've heard that narrative framed that way, right? Haven't seen that though in the last decade, say, of covering this stuff. We've never seen them frame the narrative that way before. Like claiming that nuclear is a quick option. My God, boy. Only the savages are allowed to work in the nuclear industry, I guess, at this stage. The Center for Energy Security, Strategic Studies at the University of Seoul, South Korea, says nuclear is the only thing because they recently got a new president in South Korea, right? Now he's got to go out there and promote nuclear. But the next president, who's only a couple of years away, will just stop all of this again, like Moon had done, the previous prime minister of Seoul. Even before Fukushima nuclear power was not without controversy in the region, despite typically producing far less carbon. Of course, all nuclear power plants are the biggest most carbon-intensive things in human history. Every nuclear power plant needs 2 external power plants, gas, oil, and coal plants, to run every single wire on the site. It can't run without itself, including the generators. In case it breaks down, can't start without external power. You lose external power, you can't start up your generators. It means you're going to melt down in about 50 minutes. Scandals ranging from the discovery of substandard components to lax inspection. There's one place with 10,000 fake parts in a reactor. Corporate malfeasance. Is there any other corporate in the nuclear industry? Damages the image of the industry doesn't have an image. It doesn't have a spokesperson that's known worldwide or liked worldwide. The nuclear industry doesn't have a single person that the world resonates with. If you meet a nuclear physicist or a scientist, you're going to go home and get a shower right away. You're going to go, that was creepy as shit, man. It was like their eyes were dead. Storage of nuclear waste remains political, environmental, a headache. Really, you're going to equate nuclear waste with a headache? First off, the waste is still splitting the atom into the environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Which is catastrophic for anybody that eats food. Because most of the nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. What's scary about that is that's a reprocessing plant too in the United Kingdom, surrounded by farms. And the future one they're planning on putting there, oh yeah, that's right, it's going to be surrounded by farms. That's an agenda that's to poison you. With the technology for recycling spent fuel, which is illegal in Canada, United States, mixed oxide fuel, by the way. And for a very good reason, because in order to recycle fuel, you're going to have to release absurd amount of radiation, gases, airborne radiation into the environment. There's no way to contain the gases amounts allegedly. But with the technology for recycling spent fuel still in its infancy, that's the scariest. Now, the reason that they used the mixed oxide fuel originally was because they can't store the fuel. So this way they can put it back in the reactor. When you put fuel in a reactor, turn the reactor on, those isotopes are considered 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, according to the government. But when you take it and put it through a chain reaction again, it's billions of times more toxic than industrial poison. And you can't contain it. The fuel, when it goes into the spent fuel pools, means it's still split in the atom. It's still hemorrhaging into the environment with no containment. And there's over 1,000 of them worldwide doing it. It doesn't even make sense. You're guaranteed to exterminate all the species. That's the best way to do it. You spread out this disease misery machine, this perpetual disease factory all over the world in 1,000 fuel pools. They're all hemorrhaging radiation into the environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's not just the farms around them that's going to be infested with these genocidal, omnicidal parasites known as isotopes, which are biological. This is a biological weapon, right? It has all the attributes of a biological weapon. The specter of a nuclear meltdown loomed large in the public's imagination. Even with safety advances in newer generation reactor. Whoever wrote this article, I disrespect you. In South Korea and Taiwan, nuclear power has also had to grapple with a lingering association with the past authoritarian governments. The nuclear industry is the authoritarian governments. The anally authoritarian government, making it a hard sell for the left-leaning parties that helped usher in democracy. And the word democracy doesn't exist anywhere in the constitutions, the Magna Cartas, the Bill of Rights. 51% of the people can take away the rights of the other 49%. If you're part of that 49%, you're not free. These were republics. Rights where everybody had these rights and nobody was allowed to take it away from them. A democracy, you can take away everybody's rights, including the useful idiots in the democracy. Some environmental campaigners argued this is still produces unacceptable high emissions compared with renewables like solar and wind. It doesn't matter what, like solar and wind, as if that's the only solution, because the geothermal should be forefront anyway, and then backed up by tidal energy, and back both of them up with wind and solar, and back that up, of course, with storage, like compressed air storage, which is the best one by far, because you can use the deep geological repository technologies to dig the holes quickly in order to use it as a reservoir for compressed air. So you can run entire cities with those six. So geothermal, and now, of course, if you get down to 800 feet, you got over 900 degree Fahrenheit temperatures to work with. You don't need anything else. And you can, see? And you can do it without the X-ray technology because you can tap into existing coal, oil, gas facilities Just get rid of the coal, oil, and gas and run it on geothermal. Keep the rest of the equipment. But like what I'm trying to do is even more fucked up because I'm trying to rationalize what they're saying. But this is ludicrous. You can't rationalize crazies. And these fuckers are crazy. Excuse the Canadian in me. Japan must end the plan to pollute the Pacific Ocean. But that's what they already fucking done. You're pretending that they didn't do anything. Right? Like this is a model of the plutonium-239, which is the worst plutonium fault, based on TEPCO's numbers. That's the model and an accurate ones of the Xenon-133. But what you see there is just a fraction of the model. There's only one outcome from these models. All these models ultimately are going to cover the planet in radioactive fallout. Radiation doesn't just cover a fraction of the planet. France got it right on their model. It covers and so do many others, certainly. This covers the planet in just 16 days. In just 16 days. So 16 days and the damage is permanently done. And everybody's fighting over 1,000 tanks that are actually empty. It was a perfect, right, coup, right? It was a perfect scam against the planet. And this was done by your universities, your medias worldwide, worked tirelessly for years to leave you with no way out. The first 2 years, this was the normal. That was like eating a banana. This is what they said about Fukushima. Or walking in the sunshine, flying on an airplane, sleeping next to somebody, like being in a canoe for 15 minutes. And Robert Gale had a whole just... let's explore that for a minute because that's Twilight Zone stuff. It's hard to beat the British when it comes to what the fuck, right? That's Robert Gale. He does human transplants. So he was doing a presentation with a bunch of the other maniacs. And here, check this one out. He said comparable risk to the workers at the nuclear meltdown site itself. Not nuclear scientists or nuclear academics or nuclear professors or nuclear students, of course, no. But the homeless and destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language. It's like smoking 14 cigarettes or eating peanut butter or spending 20 days in New York or driving 600 kilometers in a car or flying in a plane or kayaking for 15 minutes. Now, the problem with that story is that's untrue. That's completely... But Robert Gale, you know what he does for a living? He's incredibly educated, by the way. He does human transplants. Legs, hearts, arms, you name it. And he irradiates them. If they survive the irradiation, then they'll try to transplant. It's not trying to save their life. They're trying to work out kinks in it to save the rich people down the road, see? They're not actually trying to save the victim. And then he does lectures in his side telling the victims that it's like being in a kayak in the nuclear wasteland itself. Of course, he's from Britain, Dana. What do you expect? I know, I'm just saying. Because the British are the academics. They're literally demonic. They're literally like, what the fuck, man? If you actually go and listen to these presentations, you won't sleep. You'll be just like me. Every night And every morning I'll listen to a lecture of the official story of Fukushima. And, wow. Just to remind myself that there are people on the planet that despise all species. One of our worst enemies is journalists. They're by far our biggest enemy. They take a lot of pleasure in being just overdrive evil. See, we're getting spammed. Oh, hello, spammers. 22% thinks Fukushima followed us like a banana walking in the sunshine or flying on an airplane. That's desperation. That's so desperate to do that, eh? To spam me like that. Because we rarely get a discrepancy of that big of a number. It's extraordinary. But on a topic like this, is absurd. It's desperation, right? This is how fucking weird the industry actually is. That it's so petty it actually spammed my poll. Look, anybody tells you it's like a banana or walking in the sunshine or getting on an airplane or like being in a kayak for 15 fucking minutes or in New York City for a few hours. No one's going to blame you if you punch all their teeth out of their head and stick a light bulb in there and then kick their fucking lower jaw. Nobody's going to blame you, ultimately. And, the head of the scumbags are the IAEA. Once I descend into name calling, it's just as well for me to call it a day. It ain't going to get any better. It's just going to get worse. And when it comes to getting worse, I'm the wrong one, because I get pretty fucking rowdy. It's a bit of a flaw, I'm afraid. You're only crazy if you're not in the nuclear industry. See, if you're in the nuclear industry, it's normal. If you're not in the nuclear industry and you're shocked, then that means you're crazy. Well, if you made it this far, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Costs is very little and doesn't go very far, but it makes me feel better. I'm censored as soon as the video ends anyway. Can't believe it's the 27th. My parts for the truck still haven't showed up. It's here. It's here in the province somewhere. It should be at the post office waiting to be delivered yesterday by the looks of it, because I'm tracking it, right? So it's here. We can finally get the boat in the ocean. Yeah, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Hope everybody has a great night, great day tomorrow. Goddamn spammers. So the spammers, they show up at the last second on purpose in the comments section. Sorry, Dana and Asana, I beat you to it tonight. Oh, they got another site. Wow. New dating disrupting industry. Wow. Yeah, the spammer agrees with us even though it's a spam bot. Well, whoever the spammer is, the same person that's spamming us right there in the poll. We got spammed. That's the definition of getting spammed. Because nuclear has nothing to do with bananas, potato chips, and walking in the sunshine. Outside of they sucked up man-made radiation or poisoning you. Yeah, good night, Spambot. That's right. Let's end the poll on 56 votes. The spammer can go back to raping their puppies anyway, unfortunately. Sorry, puppy, but the poll's got to end. Because the spammers, when they're here, they're not raping puppies, see? John Shiflett, yeah, hugs for you, love for you, my friend. Andrew, pretty quick. Poor Andrew's in the United Kingdom. Thinker, good night, everybody. That spammer was pretty good, though. They hit us fast and hard. Dana Nasana, thank you again, Dana. Michael Allport, Peaceware. I'm just going to go up through it now for something to do. Oh, there was other spammers there, too. Look at that, Dana Cat. Good job, Dana. They always seem to have the same name, eh? Same type of names. James Lucid. Hi, James. We're looking for people to shout out good night to. Dale P. The Invisible Rabbit. I think I missed you last night. My apologies. Yeah, the spammers were busy tonight. Look at that. Provoke. Darlene. Andrew B, which is CFINSTR. Sandra Churchill. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, folks. Great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow night on the other side of the story. We'll pick up where we left off in tomorrow's cycle. So the last couple of weeks we done long shows and killed my throat, right? The Wise Person, Nancy Sands. Let me try to finish this out and all. So we had spammers early in the show too. Look at that. Wow. Hard cases, everybody. John Cranshaw. You're welcome. Richard McCann. No doubt I missed a few people. Not much I can do about it. Obsolete Optics. I know Colette is out there. Hi, Colette. Another Gmail. We got most of it. Robert. Andrew said no. But he had his own ideas, apparently. That's allowed. Yeah, it looks like we got everybody. Fukushima is not like a banana, eating a banana. It's not like walking in the sunshine. It's not like flying on an airplane. So why does all the media put so much energy and time and effort into trying to convince a large percentage of the population that is so? Is a terrifying question, folks. Well, there we go. We'll be back tomorrow night. Hardcore. For, I guess, this is Wednesday, isn't it? So tomorrow's the last show of the week. Wow. Some brutal news this week. I can't believe Indonesia's importing food from a nuclear meltdown. What's wrong with you folks? Good night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great one. Take care now. Yeah, good night, everybody. Take care, folks.